Welcome back to another episode of From the Couch Sports. I'm your host, and my name is Connor. I got a lot I want to get into today. I want to recap some of the UFC event we had over the weekend, and then I want to get into some NFL rumors. And as things will go this week, we do have the NFL Combine coming up, so we'll kind of dive into some of that info, later on this week. Do some more recaps and whatnot. But first things first, to get things kicked off, I want to start off with the UFC event we had over the weekend. We had UFC Vegas 49. This was Islam coming in and fighting Bobby Green on short notice. Bobby Green, he came in the fill-in for Beneil Dariush after Dariush got hurt. And before Dariush was hurt, this Islam matchup was, kind of dubbed as this is the number one contender spot. And after Dariush got hurt, to Islam it still kind of is, because it's like, he's on a 10 fight win streak, so it's kind of hard to deny someone who's been winning that much. And not only just that, but I believe his last 4 fights were all finishes, and they've all come in the span of like 11 months as well. So Islam, rightfully so, deserved the spot. This fight kind of went how I expected it to go. Like Bobby Green coming in on short notice. It's a hard matchup to go against someone who's that dominant on the ground. You know what they're gonna do, but you can't do anything to stop it. And maybe had Bobby Green had a longer camp, maybe he would have been able to stop it a little bit more, been able to get off his back. But in this fight, unfortunately, he wasn't. Islam took him down. He finished the fight on top, a TKO. So that's kind of the story of that fight. Islam now at this point is probably in the front runner for the title spot after Gaethje gets his opportunity. But another fun thing that's kind of going around is the Islam is offering to step in and fight RDA on short notice. So if Islam does that and he gets a win, that's even more impressive than the win he got over Bobby Green. That would be crazy if he did that. But time will tell. I think this is all kind of relatively new. This is just stuff talked about kind of today, and that's it. But moving past the Islam, actually, I do want to say kind of one other thing on the Islam fight. In my opinion, Islam is the favorite to become a champion. If you had to bet on, like, pick a prospect that a year from now will probably be champion, I think there's a very good chance that it's Islam. I think the matchup between Islam and Charles is very intriguing. I think it offers, kind of what like people were hoping Tony versus Khabib was. You have Islam, who kind of fills in the Khabib role. And then Charles is like the proven, he's the champion. He's the undisputed champion of the world. Incredible ground game. And he can stand and fight too. So I think that matchup is just awesome stylistically. But of course, Charles got to get through Justin Gaethje first, and that's going to be a very tough task. Gaethje in his own right is a very good fighter, so we'll see how that goes. And then, maybe if Gaethje goes against Islam, his experience fighting Khabib could help him, and maybe that's a good thing for Gaethje. So, I'm kind of interested to see how these things progress from here. And then to kind of touch on some other fights on this card. We had Wellington Turman. He got a big submission win over Serkinov, and this was a fun fight. Serkinov has been at light heavyweight for most of his career, and he's trying to get back in the win streak. And Turman he shut him down. Turman trains with Glover Teixeira, the light heavyweight champion of the world. So you can definitely tell he's got a good future ahead of him. He's a young guy. And as far as the ladies' fights go, the Kashweda versus Kim fight was a super fun fight. Right now, obviously we're, end of February. This could potentially be Women Fight of the Year candidate. This was a crazy fight. Both women went in there and they were just throwing bombs. In my opinion, Kim won the fight. She threw a significant amount of more significant strikes. Kashweda was kind of pushing the pace, and she did land some big shots in the third round. So I understand like if it's a close decision, but if you look at kind of the pictures of like what they looked like after the fight, it's very surprising that Kim didn't win this one. But it ton of fun fight regardless. I think both of them kind of raised their stock. When anytime you fight in a fight like that, win or lose, you're not like really taking a hit. I don't think you're going to be in jeopardy of getting cut or anything when you're in an outright war. Um, I mean, there's been a ton of fights like that I can think of, like just off the top of my head. Like we have the Dustin Poirier Dan Hooker fight a couple years ago. This is a fight like Dan Hooker lost, but it didn't. It's not like people aren't like respecting Dan Hooker. He's still getting a ton of big fights because he was in a slugfest. So that was a ton of fun, and so was this Cachoeira and Kim fight. And then one of my one of the most intriguing fighters on this card, Arman Sarukian. He was fighting Joel Alvarez, and Arman is just he's probably going to be a lightweight contender very soon. He's still a very young guy, but he went in there and basically said, I'm gonna try to beat you in your strength of fighting. You're supposed to be this great ground guy. I think 16 of his 19 wins were via submission. So Joel Alvarez is a great fighter, and Arman is just that good. He took him down in the first round, and he was just raining these elbows, and one of those elbows cut Joel really bad. And Joel was literally gushing blood. He was wiping the blood out of his eyes. And then the round ended. It very, very, very close to being stopped if the first round would have continued. And then Joel went into his corner, and they were only focused on cleaning up this cut. Like, they didn't focus on any of the other blood all over him. Just fixing this cut, putting some Vaseline on it, getting them ready to go round two. They did the best they could, but while he was standing there waiting for round two, he's just dripping down his face. He's still bleeding. And then round two comes around, and Sarukian takes him down and tries to finish him. He's going for submissions, and then he just finishes him ground and pound, makes him bleed even worse. It was a crazy stoppage. So that's a ton of fun fight. I know Arman fought against Islam. I think it was in his UFC debut. So he's definitely an intriguing guy to go forward. He should be very close to the top 10, hopefully fighting someone like in that ballpark with his next fight. I know a lot of people are saying like a Gregor Gillespie would be a good matchup. I totally agree. I think that would be a fun fight to watch. So I think he's going to be a guy. Maybe he sees Islam again down the line when Islam has the belt. I think it's a very possible thing. And then another fight that I really liked was Armen Petrosyan versus Gregory Rodriguez. This was a super fun fight. Also, it was a split decision, but Rodriguez showed like in the few chances that he had to take it to the ground, he looked like the stronger grappler, but he didn't want to grapple a lot. He was very confident in his stand up in this fight. You could tell he has a ton of power in his hands. But Petrosyan just put the pace on him. He threw more strikes. He utilizes his leg kicks and kicks to the body, and he had a much heavier kick strategy, and he was able to edge out the split decision because of that. But both guys, again, another fight. I think both of their stocks rise with this fight, win or loss. I'm excited to see both of them fight again. And then I got a couple fights on the prelims that I thought were really fun. The Zhu versus Bahamondes. Bahamondes, crazy fun fighter. This is a guy who is trying to get a finish from start to the end of the fight. In both of his last fights, he's gotten finishes in the third round. The fight before this, he had that spinning heel kick on Roosevelt Roberts, and then this fight, he had a submission in the third round. So, ton of fun to watch. I'm excited to see where he goes in his career as well. Another young up and coming prospect. And then another fun lightweight fight, Terrence McKinney. This is a guy we talked about on my last video. We haven't seen him. We haven't really seen him challenged much. We haven't seen him grapple or anything in the UFC, at least. So I was interested to see how would that play out. Fight starts. He throws a left, and he gets kind of caught off, like off balance almost, and they go to the ground, and then he scrambles, and all of a sudden he's in control of this fight. You can tell he's got a solid ground game. It might even be his strength, but he's also got the power to knock dudes out. So he was able to get the submission in this fight. And Ziam he wasn't able to do anything really. He couldn't get back up. McKinney just dominated this fight. So I'm super excited to see where this guy goes, because this is a guy who's got a great wrestling base, and he's also got crazy knockout power. And he's also super young, so he's only going to get better from this point. And then, the last fight I wanted to talk about was the Jonathan Martinez versus Perez. This is a really fun fight too. Guys that are a lighter weight class. Martinez constantly pushing pace, using his kicks most of the fight. At the end of the first round, I believe it was, he got dropped. If there was like another 10, 15 seconds, he probably would have lost that fight. But he was able to rebound from that moment, and round 2 and round 3, he was able to take more control and, edge out on the decision on the victory. So that was a fun fight to watch as well. And then, that kind of sums it up. It was a really fun UFC card. Like I said, these cards, they get talked about like they're not too fun to watch. They always, they live up to, they disprove the hype, because people don't get hyped for them, and then you come out, you watch it, and it's an incredible card. Great fight matchups, tons of fun fights. So that's my take on that. I do want to get into some of the NFL rumors that we got going on right now. A big one, this whole Kyler Murray situation. It came out of left field, ironically, for a guy who got drafted to play baseball. Like a couple weeks ago, the news broke. It's funny that the day and age that we live in, 2022, is a time where I don't even know who does this, but a ton of people literally sit on their smartphones and they wait and they look at people's bios on Twitter and Instagram. And the moment that a player takes down a picture with the Cardinals in it, the moment they take a team name out of their bio, it's all hell breaks loose. Huge media story. And it's like, what is there to it? It was like, Kyler had a decent year 3. They went to the playoffs and they flopped. They had a horrible performance in the playoffs. And, where could this be coming from? Because, if you're looking at it as a Cardinals fan, this team has done a ton to surround Kyler Murray with weapons. They got, the offensive guru from college in Cliff Kingsbury. You trade for you trade for D-Hop, DeAndre Hopkins. You get D-Hop. You bring in A.J. Green. They brought in Zach Ertz. James Conner, Chase Edmonds. Sick run game. Overall, this team's they've done a lot to kind of put themselves in position to win. And when push come to shove, playoff time, Kyler Murray didn't show up. And then this whole nonsense starts with the Instagram wiping, and then this guy's clown of an agent comes out and puts out this literal 3-page letter. It's in tiny fine print, you can barely read it. Basically saying we want to get paid our market value based on what Kyler's performed in his career so far. We believe that we want this team to commit to him long term, and yada yada yada. Basically, he's demanding the contract in year 3. He has his agent coming out with this statement. He's doing a lot of, it's ridiculous stuff. It's kind of childish, to do the whole social media, delete your team pictures from your Instagram. It's come on, dude. It doesn't make any sense to me. And then, looking at it from the Cardinals' perspective, it's look, we used the number 1 pick on you. We've got you under contract for 4 years. We can pick up your 5th-year option. So technically, he could be locked in for 2 more years. And then even after that, they could franchise tag him for 2 more years. So if Arizona wanted to, they could drag this thing out for another 4 seasons without having to give him a long-term extension. And to me, it's what has this dude I want to make a comparison because there's another player in the NFL that was drafted before Kyler the year prior. And he has had a better NFL career than Kyler has, and he still has not gotten, his long-term extension. And that's Lamar Jackson, the former MVP. So you got an MVP who doesn't have his long-term extension, and he doesn't have his agent coming out here releasing these statements. Lamar's played 4 seasons where Kyler's only played 3, and it's just like, dude, you have improved the team. Don't get me wrong, and Kyler is a great young prospect, but like to go in demanding all this money and everything, like, the rumor is that he wants to be paid like, in the top ballpark of the league, in the Deshaun, the Patrick Mahomes type money. And it's just like, what has he done to warrant getting paid that much right now? It's especially in the time that, like, these teams, like, they praise if you get the right pieces in place, you can win a Super Bowl when you got a guy on a rookie contract. And then, once you do pay him big money, it's a little bit harder to do that because you're working in cap hell every year. So it's interesting to me because, like, part of his statement said that his number one goal is to win a Super Bowl. And it's like, dude, if that's your number one goal, then being on your rookie deal for sure helps your team do that a little bit better than, if they start paying you 40, 45 mil a year, then it's just like, dude, how are they going to bring back pieces? Like, I know they got, like, I think AJ Green's a free agent, Zach Ertz, Edmonds. I don't know about Connor. I think he might be a free agent. It's like, you got all these pieces around you. If you go out and you get paid 45 mil a year, you're probably going to lose some of those pieces. They're not going to be able to pay guys to play around you. On the defensive side, you're probably going to lose Chandler Jones. And, it doesn't make much sense to me that, like, he's demanding it this soon. Like, I could understand if this is after year 4, or maybe even if this was after, like, you got a couple playoff wins. But, this doesn't show, like, that you want to win a Super Bowl. Because if you want to win a Super Bowl, getting paid crazy amount of money is not how you do it. You can just look at the track record. Russell Wilson went out, won a Super Bowl on his rookie contract, got paid like crazy, and the Seahawks haven't even been close to it ever since. And, Russell Wilson's like a very comparable player to Kyler, so it's just like, it doesn't make sense to me. This is a guy, he went 8-8 year 2. This year he didn't play the full year, but when he did play, he went 9-5. So it's like he's not the best QB in football by any means. He's definitely a great young player. And obviously, like, he probably should be extended, probably after year 4, most likely. But, to be coming out here strong-arming the Cardinals, making this a public thing, just, it doesn't make sense to me. I think Arizona is a good spot for him to be in, and, to start, kind of making the relationship, like, just doing the things he can. It's like, you don't want to hurt the relationship with a team that you could potentially be on for another 10 years or so. So that's just kind of my take on the Kyler Murray situation. Another situation of a guy that was also taken in the same class, because basically the 5th-year option's coming up. I believe it's May 2nd. The teams have to decide, are we going to give them the 5th-year option? So a team, the New York Giants, Daniel Jones, he's ready to be due the 5th-year option or extended. And with Daniel Jones, it's interesting because the GM, he gets hired, and they're like, we want to commit to Daniel Jones. We want to build around him, do things the right way. They bring in Brian Daboll, who's a good coach who can probably get that out of him. At the very least, give it a shot. You got a good offensive-minded coach. But then also, like, they don't want to pick up the 5th-year option is what the rumor is, which is totally understandable. It's 20-plus mil guaranteed to a guy you don't know whether or not he's going to be the guy. And you know what I think is that this year for the Giants is going to be an interesting one because it's going to be the start of a new regime, and maybe things do work out with Daniel Jones, and maybe they are able to get a lot out of him. That's to be seen. But the other thing too is it's like if they're not like Daniel Jones is a safe option right now because there's no like immediate replacement in the draft. The Giants, they do have a ton of assets, so if they wanted to go out and trade for a veteran, they could totally do it. But they have assets as in picks, but they don't have a lot of cap space. They're in a really tough position cap wise. Former GM kind of screwed them over on that. But it's going to be interesting. I think they ride out Daniel Jones for 2022, and then we go into 2023, and there's supposed to be a loaded draft class. If the Giants stink again, they could probably be in position to take Bryce Young potentially from Alabama or some of these other guys that are going to be highly rated at this time next year. So I think that's safe for them. This year I think they draft 5 and 7, or they have 2 top 10 picks. So regardless of where they go, they're going to get some nice pieces for the team to build around. There's a lot of question marks. Like what's the future of Saquon look like? How are things going to work out? Like the Kenny Golladay contract. There's rumors that they're going to cut some guys on the defense like Bradbury, and so I'm very interested to see how like the Giants kind of go forward with things. But just looking at it now, like it makes sense. You keep Daniel Jones for year 4, see how things go, and then you don't want to commit to him for year 5. And then like let's say he does have a good year. He's a guy who hasn't like really blown anybody away, so they could probably get him for a reasonable contract. If they do want to extend him after year 4. So that's just my take on the Giants situation. Another situation I want to talk about. Another situation I want to get into is the Buccaneers situation. So Ollie Marpet just retired. He's a Pro Bowl guard. And so now basically you've had Tom Brady retire, you had Marpet retire, probably Gronk's going to retire, and even if he doesn't retire, he's not going back to the Bucs most likely. He's a free agent. Outside of those guys, you got Ryan Jensen, you got Cap, Lyman, they're free agents. You got Gronk, Godwin, O.J. Howard, Leonard Fournette, Rojo, Giovanni Bernard. They're all free agents. So if you're looking at the Buccaneers, they kind of went all in on 2 years, and it's interesting. It's kind of like do you go all in on rebuilding this team so that maybe you guys can make a run here down in a couple more years, or you have an older coach. Are you able to kind of retool with the way things are? Are you able to maybe bring in a good QB? I'm not even sure like what kind of assets the Bucs would be working with. I think they just have their normal picks. So would they be in position to bring in a top QB to kind of keep things going? And then, if they were able to bring in like an Aaron Rodgers, they could probably get guys to come back on, reasonable deals. But otherwise, like, you got a guy like Godwin. This is a dude who came back on the franchise tag last year. Like he's due to get paid really good, and the Buccaneers probably won't be the team to do that, so they're not like giving up so many assets just to receiver. So it's really interesting kind of position that the Buccaneers are going to be in. I don't really know like what I would do if I was in their position. I honestly I think the move would be to go after a top QB like early in the offseason before right around here in a couple weeks when free agency starting, before the drafts things kick off. If you're able to like land a big QB, then you can go all in on stacking your chips into retooling this roster and going in and potentially making another Super Bowl run. But if you slip up and you can't land a big name, then you're kind of in a position like, let's maybe rebuild. Let's maybe, get rid of these assets, maybe make a couple trades of some older guys, send them to competing teams, get some more picks in here, and then just kind of do a rebuild from this point. Because in reality, like you're gonna go from Tom Brady having all the league leading yards, touchdowns, all that, to potentially having a Kyle Trask or someone like that come in and start. It's a tough position for the Buccaneers to be in. And then one other thing I want to touch on. New York Jets, this is a rumor that came out recently that the Jets are interested in using a premium asset on a cornerback. That's either a first round pick or potentially a big contract. The other part of this rumor is that supposedly the Jets don't value Bryce Hall as much as some others think, basically due to the fact that he doesn't create a lot of turnovers. And I'm gonna cover a lot of these topics because I think at this time in the off season, I think a lot of stuff is BS. I think people got to come up with stories. We don't know how things are gonna play out in free agency, but like to me, we can just look at history. That's all we have here. What has Joe Douglas done at the cornerback position to indicate that he cares this much about it? He's done nothing besides use late round picks. He drafted Bryce Hall, hit on Bryce Hall. They got Eccles, they got Carter last year. They like the young group of guys that they have. And last year, the whole offseason was, are we going to get K'Wan Williams? Are we going to get Richard Sherman? Like, what big name free agent are we going to bring in? Who are we going to add to this cornerback group? And the whole time it was Robert Saleh. I really like the young guys. I want to see what we got here. So, don't get me wrong. I completely agree. Corner is a position of need. But some people saying like, we're gonna go fourth overall, take a corner there, or like guaranteed if we don't go fourth, we're taking someone 10th overall. I don't necessarily believe that. I think there is a very good chance, like in the first 3 rounds, a corner's taken. But maybe we take a corner with our second round pick, or our third round pick. Like, there's no guarantee that it's gonna be 5 or 10, or 4 or 10. I don't think it has to be. Like, I think if there is a corner in free agency, that's the ideal move. You target the defense. If you could come in and go grab a starting safety, a starting corner, maybe a linebacker in free agency, and then attack other positions in the draft, focus on the offense, getting young guys to play with Zach Wilson, getting the line up to shape, and then, also the D-line. I think Saleh and Joe Douglas, they value the offensive and defensive line above everything else. So they want to build in the trenches. If you have a dominant pass rush, it's not really going to matter too much who's on the outside at corner. We can kind of just look at like the 49ers teams that have been put together the last few years, especially the teams that Saleh was coaching as the DC. Those teams, they didn't really have elite cornerback play. You did have Sherman, but like Sherman kind of towards the end of his career, he's just a savvy veteran. He did have like a pretty good year in San Fran, but he's not like in his Seattle peak days or anything. So I think something like that. If there's a similar situation to a Sherman, like if you can bring in Stephon Gilmore or something like that, I'm all for it. But like to say that like the Jets are legit, we're going all in, premium asset. It's a first round pick or a ton of money. It's like, that implies like we're gonna pull a Tremaine Johnson situation again or a D Milner, and it's like I think this team is smart. I think if there's a guy at 10 overall that they value, and they've already addressed the receiver position, then maybe they do that. But I think realistically, taking a guy in the second or the third round, if we don't bring in a free agent, that's probably pretty realistic. But also like bringing in, let's say they bring in Carlton Davis or someone like that. I think that's realistic as far as the free agency approach goes. And then they don't really have the need to overdraft someone. Then you can just take another shot at like a guy in the mid to late rounds again to see if you can get another kind of gem like they did with Bryce Hall. I disagree with the Bryce Hall take because, like we see a lot of stats out there, like as far as second year corners, he was one of the best statistically. The turnovers thing, I think that can come in time. Not every corner is just getting a ton of turnovers year in, year out. It fluctuates a lot. Sometimes guys have 5 turnover seasons, and then the next year they have hardly any. And the funny thing is too, like Darrelle Revis, he was shutting guys down, lockdown corner. He wasn't always getting a ton of interceptions, but he's also, limiting what you can do on offense because he's taking a receiver out of the game. So there's different ways to look at this. I think ultimately the Jets are going to focus on their lines and then building weapons around Zach Wilson and then hopefully get in some nice pieces for the defense through free agency. But as always, like things are gonna take time. Only time will tell. But anyways, that's just my thoughts on UFC event from the weekend and then some of the NFL rumors. Let me know your take on everything. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed the video, like and subscribe. And please follow for more. Thank you.